Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special ambush stream on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope you're all doing well on this Tuesday afternoon. There's not really a title for this like it's a series or something. It's just ambush stream. So earlier today, I was doing a little bit of research. I was looking to see if I could find any news articles pertaining to DEI and see if there was anything new in the DEI world. And there is. I might do a digest stream or something on some of the stories I found. But in the course of that research, I came across a link to an event that occurred just last week, an event called Impact Initiative 2023. This is apparently something that is put on by Fortune magazine once a year, or at least the last 2 years. I don't know if it went on any earlier than that. But Impact, remember, impact is our new magic word in the corporate sphere for the virtuous stuff. Yes, Impact Initiative 2023 is a sort of a conference, a celebration, if you will, of ESG and DEI and a whole raft of other concepts. And they did a whole bunch of panels and keynote speeches, but a couple of the panel titles caught my attention. And at the top of that list was the one that was Affirmative Action Rollback and its effect on the corporate world. And I was like, ooh, what does affirmative action have to do with the corporate world? Affirmative action only affects college admissions, right? And of course, those of you who are veterans to the channel, you know the answer to that question. But I'm more curious to find out how our speakers frame the problem and what they have to say about it, given that Fortune is often used as the bellwether for the success and progress in DEI initiatives in the country and in the world, really, oftentimes. You often hear about the Fortune 100 companies or the Fortune 500 CEOs and so on as a marker of how much progress we've made and how much we still have to go. So that's what inspired me to do this today. There was a couple of panels from this event. I may do additional videos on a couple of those in the future, but I wanted to focus on this one because it goes right to the heart of one of my most curious subjects over the last 6 months and really over the course of my channel's lifetime. But before I get into all of that, who's joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon? Keeverdam, hello. And also before I go any further, Keeverdam has helpfully provided the links to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box. So please take a look at those if you can. They're for several of the audience members of this channel, including Joshua, who needs some help with some garnishment. Oh, sorry. No, I think Joshua wasn't accepting donations anymore. I apologize. Maddie, that's right. Maddie needs some help with the deductibles for her cancer treatment. That's the first one on the list. So please, if you would, take a look at that one for sure. As well, our friend Moonshock is recovering from cancer surgery. So take a look at that one. Let's see who else is on here. Angry Illinoisian needs some help because of some medical issues. And I think, is that go from? Oh, yes. And Lisa and her boyfriend need some help paying for their puppy's surgery. So that's just getting my head straight on again. It's been a busy work day. So there's the fundraisers at the top of the chat box. If you can donate, please do so. If you can't, please share those out on social media. Continuing on with those of you attending. Brittany Holland, hello. Shady Grin, hello. Noah Asensio, hello. Somnambulan Nation, hello. Grand Inquisitor, Tier Alexander, hello. Derek LaRue, thank you so much, as always, for your continued generosity and support. Hope you're having a good Tuesday. Hope you enjoy the show. Funtime Bats, hello. Misinformation, hello. A Guy in His Room, hello. And Keldrig, hello. And to anybody else I either missed or is lurking or is in the future, hello. So let's get right into this. This lasts just under 20 minutes, so I better get started here. I don't imagine I'll do a two-parter, so I'll just go through this as long as it takes or until I get bored. But at minimum, an hour and a half. I'll try to keep it at that time frame if I can, or just a little bit. And without any further ado, let's continue, or I should say continue. Let's begin with Impact Initiative 2023, Fortune Magazine, the Affirmative Action Rollback. It's not really a rollback. It was abolished outright, but whatever. And its effect on the corporate world.
Even before this year's Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, corporations were feeling the legal and public pressure over diversity efforts.
Why? Why? What is the legal argument against quote unquote diversity efforts?
More than 20 major American employers openly urged the Supreme Court to uphold affirmative action because they rely on colleges and universities to educate their future workforces.
No, they want to uphold affirmative action because if it's not upheld, a major plank, or as to say pillar under which all DEI operations work, goes away and the legality of it becomes far more questionable than it was before. Because if you cannot justify using race as a determinative factor in opportunity in college admissions, if that is unconstitutional under Title VI, then doing anything likewise under Title VII, which affects companies, also has no place to hide. Let's see. Keeverdam says, sounds good. Oh, that's right. I didn't even ask if for a sound test, did I? Apologies. Well, thank you, Keeverdam. Appreciate the verification. Also, hello, Mike Savage, Blarg, Caro Soldier, and Simon Willikins. Good afternoon.
Now that affirmative action has been overturned, many fear corporate diversity efforts are next for the taking.
Why? Are you guys going to explain what the risk are you at least going to entertain the other side's argument against them?
Here to discuss the corporate implications of the rollback, please welcome our next panel. Marion Brooks is Vice President and U.S. Country Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Novartis, a pharmaceutical organization.
Ooh, okay. Good. I like experts and corporate officers.
Which received public backlash from conservative groups.
Oh, before I continue, a little note here. Not Attorney Eris. Hi, Ascribe. Found your channel through AAA. Well, welcome to the channel. Hope you enjoy your stay. Yes, I'll be sticking with AAA for 2 more shows this week. I'll talk more about that at the end of this stream, so welcome.
Because of their diverse hiring practices.
Oh, let me back up a little bit because I want to make sure I get the full context here.
Is Vice President and U.S. Country Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Novartis, a pharmaceutical organization, which received public backlash from conservative groups because of their diverse hiring practices.
For what reason?
Alfonso David is President and CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum and pro bono legal counsel to the Fearless Fund, an Atlanta-based venture capital firm currently responding to legal challenges to a grant program for businesses led by Black women.
So racially discriminatory financial opportunities.
And Joelle Emerson, co-founder and CEO of Paradigm, a consulting firm that helps organizations advance their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
Oh boy, a DEI consultant. Boy, so we got a corporate officer, we've got a attorney, and we have a DEI consultant. What a great panel! Like that really, and I'm not being facetious. That really does cover the gamut of the DEI sphere of actors and movers and shakers.
They'll be interviewed by Fortune's leadership editor, Ruth Umo.
Okay. I hope this music isn't copyrighted. I'm going to skip over just a little bit just to make sure I'll wait till they're all seated.
A lot to discuss, a limited amount of time to do it in, so let's dive right in. As we already noted, in the wake of SCOTUS's reversal of affirmative action, there's been a corporate legal assault on diversity and inclusion efforts. Conservative groups are targeting companies like Amazon, Target, Comcast, Starbucks, the list goes on.
And what is their legal objection? On what basis are they opposing these things legally? Will you at least articulate the basics?
And there's a fear that it will have a really chilling effect on corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we are already seeing. Marion, I want
So it already has had the effect that you fear is going to have. Okay.
to start with you. How worried are companies like Novartis about the letter sent by 13 Republican state attorney general threatening the 100 biggest U.S. companies that the affirmative action ruling could apply to private entities? And how are you and other leaders like you responding to that?
Okay, so yeah, the letter sent by the 13 attorneys general on the Republican side of the aisle, which was, I believe, back in July, essentially said, hey, you companies, specifically the top 100 and the Fortune 100, but really to corporate America in general, if you are engaging in DEI initiatives and such, be wary. What you're doing is illegal. and we're going to be taking action. What she didn't mention was the response by several Democratic attorneys general shortly thereafter that assured corporate America that what they were doing was legal, because they weren't engaging in racist and illegal quotas. What they were engaging in was aspirational diversity goals. This is the major legal point. This is the danger zone for companies. Most everything that companies talk about when it comes to DEI could reasonably be dismissed as just rhetoric. It's kind of a nebulous area as to whether or not saying certain things or implying certain initiatives crosses the line into illegality. The one element, however, that no one argues is crossing the line in illegality is maintaining and trying to fulfill a quota. If you have a quota based on a racial or gender demographic with a timeline and everything else, you have stepped at least, and I'll be, nice here and say you'll have at least stepped on the line, if not completely crossed over it. Probably crossed over it, but it's a case-by-case basis. And so what the Democratic Attorneys General letter was meant to say was there's somehow a difference between an aspirational diversity goal and a quota. So I'm curious to find out if they bring up quotas and or aspirational goals. But yes, what are the companies worried about and how are they reacting to this?
So I think you always have to take into account these types of letters and information that's sent, but you also have to take into account that 21 Democratic attorney generals also sent a note in support. So I think the balance and making sure that you don't overreact to either side.
Okay, but you see in your own statement, you're talking about a partisan assessment of the situation. What is the letter of the law when it comes to what you can and cannot do in a private organization in the United States under the Civil Rights Act?
So we have to take a balanced and strategic approach to this. Stay committed to our objectives, but be flexible and agile to the environment that we're working in, and that's what we're doing.
Is your objective based on a quota? Do you have a percentile goal to achieve in your workforce or your leadership based on a demographic or demographics with a timeline? So 25% by 2025 or 50% by 2030. I've heard these things and similar things several times now. If you're not operating under a quota, if you're not hiring people on the basis of what they look like, and you don't have it recorded as such, you're probably in the clear. But what do you mean by objectives? What is your objective? And does that amount to a quota?
So we're evaluating everything that is coming from both sides of the table and making sure that we stay committed to ensuring that all people have an opportunity to learn, grow, and develop at Novartis, and that we're partnering with our communities to ensure that we're enabling the next generation of leaders. So
then why do you engage in DEI practices? DEI is not about letting everybody have the opportunities. It's about assessing people on the demographic they fall into. That's that whole diversity part, which is really just discrimination. So I would love to hear from our speaker. What is a specific objective that they're working to achieve using their DEI processes? Specific objective, goal, outcome.
we're committed to that.
Absolutely. Alfonso, the core of affirmative action was really to redress historical wrongs, to create a pathway for educational opportunity, and subsequently a pathway to achieving the American dream. Obviously, colleges provide a pipeline of talent for entry-level roles in corporate America. What does all of this mean for employers and for the future economic opportunity available to Black Americans?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action is going to have a significant impact on the talent pipeline.
Yes, it will better assure that people getting into and through college are doing so based on their merit. Okay, I assume that's not what he means.
And specifically, if companies are really directing their recruitment efforts through the pipeline of Ivy League institutions, we will see that impact be quite severe.
Well, again, what impact are you talking about? Severe in what way? How does it affect the talent pipeline? Underscore the word talent.
We don't have to go too far back. A number of years ago, California made a decision to basically do away with the concept of affirmative action in education. And
that was 1996, yes.
We saw a significant impact, not only in the workforce, but also in education. And we're going to see that, unfortunately, here. And I think companies have to really be strategic and recommit to making sure that they have a diverse work pool.
How? What mechanism? So far, we've heard nothing specific. I really wonder if they will get there. Okay, in the absence, now, here's the thing. Again, private companies have not had affirmative action as a justification for their DEI practices. They have assumed a kind of legal coverage of a kind from the existence of affirmative action in colleges for their own programs. But okay, now suddenly affirmative action is gone. What will you do? What initiatives will you begin? What mechanisms will you employ to achieve the goals you want without somehow violating affirmative action, which doesn't exist anymore and never existed for private companies in the first place, the way that it was rendered under Title VI? It's all very confusing.
And that is looking beyond the current strategies that they're using and really thinking about HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, among other strategies.
Wait. Setting your recruitment efforts at HBCUs has always been a strategy. That's not a new idea. They've been doing that for years now so that they can up the chances that anybody applying for the jobs at their companies are going to be in the demographics that they want. Recruitment and outreach is, generally speaking, the safest form of workplace discrimination that you can commit without violating the law. It's only at the point at which we get somebody into an interview room and so on that it becomes much more tenuous. But HBCUs, that's not a new strategy. What is an old strategy that is no longer valid? And what is a new strategy that is meant to compensate for the absence of affirmative action? Do you think we'll hear any of that?
Make sure that they recruit diverse talent. And this, again, is not just about the right thing to do.
You're right. It is definitely not about the right thing to do.
I think often in these conversations, we forget to talk about that diversity actually leads to business growth.
Oh, really? For a fact. Simply the demographic makeup of your workforce leads to business growth. Okay.
Diversity leads to innovation.
Oh, does it? Why? Is there a quality of thought that you can assign to certain races versus others?
And that's why we do this. So affirmative action, the decision is what it is. But I think companies have to really reassess how they are engaging on recruitment.
Okay, well, how would you suggest they do that? I mean, let's just set aside all the opinions for a second. Affirmative action in colleges is gone. Okay, it sets an interesting and perhaps fatal precedent for DEI programs and corporations because the similarities between Title VI and Title VII as relates to organizations that accept federal funds versus private companies almost mirror each other in concern. All right, so that being said, what would you suggest companies do to still pursue their DEI desires, but do it in a more safe, legal/effective way?
Yeah. Those that fail to do so, what are the potential consequences? Either of you can answer.
I think that's severe from not only in terms of business growth, but I think you may face litigation as well.
Why?
Look, there's a fear, I think, that we're experiencing now in some companies where, yes, these attorney generals have issued a letter, but recognize that if you go the other way, you could have significant exposure and risk as well.
Okay, how so?
Look, we live in a country where we're still suffering from the vestiges of slavery.
Oh, give me a really? Okay, so you don't have an answer to that one. You run to slavery, really?
We still live in a country where the wage gap is 12-1.
The wage gap. Boy, oh boy, do I have the bingo card ready?
And when Martin Luther King gave his speech on March on Washington, it was 8-1.
Oh, okay.
So when we take a look at the current climate that we operate in, companies need to recognize that they are part of our culture.
Oh.
They're not removed from it. And as they make decisions that are integral to their recruitment, their promotion, their hiring efforts,
as they make these decisions, they have to consider, are they on the side of slavery or not? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Give me a break. This is nonsense. This is such a cheap avoidance of the question. Why would companies be under legal threat for maintaining their DEI practices? And if they were to reverse course entirely, why would that also be a risk? That's where you started out, and now we're into slavery and Martin Luther King Jr. Okay.
It has to be diverse.
You look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just agreeing with everything that was said. But I think we also have to look at the historical components of it.
But what, beyond slavery and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Okay, what other historical components do you want to talk about?
Right. So if you think about the ending of slavery.
Oh, this has nothing to do with slavery. This has to do with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's interesting that he brought up Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in this conversation. It has to do with Title VII, how that relates to Title VI, and by extension, how that relates to the affirmative action decision. That's where we are at. That is the risk that companies have been putting themselves under this entire time. It's not as if DEI practices were covered or made legal by college affirmative action. They have been walking the line of legality the entire time. It's only become into focus now because of what the Supreme Court did on colleges, because it takes away an argument of defense that any company could use to bolster its DEI practices, because the main component of DEI is diversity. And the diversity argument to justify racial discrimination in college admissions was tossed out as unconstitutional. So everything that underpins DEI in a legal argument has already been found to be wanting. That's the danger. Why are we talking about slavery?
And then Reconstruction. Reconstruction was 14 years of amazing progress for Black people in education, in politics, in real estate, all aspects. And then the backlash came. And then we ended up with policies changing, laws changing. In the next 100 years, we were in the throes of segregation and Jim Crow.
Yeah, and then what happened to Jim Crow? What happened to segregation? You're going to talk about the evolution of laws from Reconstruction all the way through the next 100 years? Are you going to talk about what happened just in the last 60 or so?
We're at a pivot point similar to that right now.
No. Wait. You're just gonna skip the civil rights movement. You're just gonna skip the Civil Rights Act, Dr. Martin Luther King, the March on Washington. You're just gonna skip all that stuff. You're gonna skip everything that's happened since 1964 and in the decades prior. You're just gonna go from Reconstruction plus 100 years, and now we're here at a new turning point. Are you kidding me?
We had the social awakening with George Floyd's murder.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Yep. Time began.
And we've had two and a half years of progress. Oh. And now the backlash.
No. Affirmative action has been opposed since its inception. We're talking about affirmative action. DEI existed before George Floyd. These legal questions have existed before the beginning of time, as you put it here. George Floyd has nothing to do with this. Slavery has nothing to do with this. And you skipped over the most relevant event in this subject, and that is the Civil Rights Act. Why do you keep doing that?
The question we have to ask ourselves is, what will we do differently this time?
I don't know. What did you do before, and what do you suggest be done now? You have got to be kidding me. I know I shouldn't be surprised, but you know, like I say, it's rare that I ever look at the same speaker or set of speakers twice. And so I always have my hopes up a little higher that I'm going to hear something new from someone I've never heard from before. And here we are. Thank you, Keldrig. Did he just compare the modern era to Jim Crow? That's Al Sharpton levels of disingenuous. Oh, yeah, no, he skipped over the entire civil rights movement. He went from the Civil War, slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and now. Nothing happened in between Jim Crow and segregation and the modern day. Nothing. Nothing. Ugh.
Not to end up in the same situation.
Very
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Have you guys even addressed the subject of this talk yet? I wonder if our consultant will bring up slavery.
well said. Joelle, let me turn to you. You've partnered with a host of companies like Airbnb, GE, Slack, Snap, Sephora.
Wow.
What are you hearing privately about the corporate implications of the affirmative action decision?
Yes.
What are you being asked? Is there any apprehension? What are you telling your clients?
Yes. Okay. You've asked this question basically of all the speakers so far. We haven't actually gotten a firm answer on any of it. Is third time the charm?
I think it's exactly as you alluded to, and as Stacey Abrams said earlier, that the entire point of this is the chilling effect.
Stacey, oh yeah, that's right. Stacey Abrams was one of this event's keynote speakers, I believe. I don't know if I can find a video of her speech. Even if I did, I'm not sure if I'm all that interested, but yeah, just she brings up Stacey Abrams because she was at this event.
And we're absolutely seeing that in many organizations, a general fear. And when I say general, I mean, it's not specific in a lot of companies. It's not, we are specifically concerned that this program might violate the law. It's a general fear of all efforts that are getting like categorized as DEI efforts.
What is the law that they might be afraid they are breaking? Are you even going to articulate it?
And so a lot of the work that we're doing with organizations is, first of all, being very specific. What did this ruling say? What are the lawsuits that are coming out against law firms and other organizations?
Yeah.
Where do you have programs that might be at risk? And how, instead of halting those programs, do you take a pause and re-articulate the reasons why you had those programs in the first place?
No. I mean, that is the creative way to go. You know, restate your intentions. It's not that these programs are suddenly under threat. These programs have always been in doubt. They have always been legally suspect. This is the point that I wish more people would think about for a second. DEI didn't suddenly become a question mark because of the affirmative action decision. DEI in corporate America, operating under Title VII, has always been sus. But okay, only now does it become a question. You see, the real question is, once you realize that, once you can admit that, many of these companies who have been engaging in this DEI stuff for the last decade or so, yeah, they might have, and probably do in some cases, years upon years upon years of civil rights violations just waiting for a class action lawsuit to come their way. They don't, like I said, the Supreme Court decision did not draw a line in the sands of time that said anything that took place before this date is probably in safe territory and anything after this becomes suspect. No. In corporate America, it's always been questionable. It's always been vulnerable. It's only now that anybody seems to be paying any attention.
I think to Alfonso's point, you have just as much risk, if not more, even if you don't care about DEI, I hope everyone does, but even if you don't, even if all you care about is legal risk, I think undoing some of these programs poses a lot of legal risk, right?
Why? Why does it pose a legal risk?
Right? Because let's say you have a mentoring program focused on mid-level Black professionals. A lot
Okay, let's say you do, and I've seen many of those, okay?
A lot of our clients do.
Yeah, sure.
The reason you probably developed that program is that you probably found that in your organization, by default, white men were getting promoted at a higher rate than other people, and maybe you found that Black managers or senior managers were getting promoted at a lower rate. When you looked into that, maybe you found that that's because Black mid-level managers didn't have the same type of access to mentoring and sponsorship opportunities, formally or informally, that we see going to majority group members. And so what you did
was you took a situation where you detected there was racism and decided to actively instill a program that was racist. Okay?
is you developed this program to say, we're going to do something specific to counter the inequity we see, to try and close this gap, to level the playing field.
Does an inequity inherently indicate an injustice? Or I should say, pardon me, I got my vocabulary mixed up. Let's start over again. Does this disparity inherently indicate an inequity? You say inequity, an unjust situation, something that is unfair. Have you proven it was unjust? Have you proven it's unfair? Or is it just a matter of statistics and population demographics? You've arrived at a moral conclusion for what you see in a statistical disparity. That might be your problem.
So if you now start to pull those programs away, you're just going to have the actual discrimination that you were fighting in the first place start to reemerge more significantly. So
well, you're assuming discrimination simply because of a statistical disparity. This is the God of the gaps theory of statistical analysis. Oh, there's a disparity between this gender and the other gender, therefore sexism. There's a disparity between this race and this race, therefore racism. There are no other factors, there's no other considerations. You've already convicted the company and the people therein of being terrible people who assess everybody on the basis of their appearance. So in order to counter that, you're going to start a program that assesses everybody on the basis of their appearance. You're right. There is no win-win to this. It's just...
I think companies should be more afraid of actual discrimination against marginalized groups than they are of quote-unquote reverse discrimination cases being brought by anti-progress activists, not even real plaintiffs that seem to have suffered any actual damage. So,
actual damage. Okay, well, I would like our speaker to explain for us where in Title VII it says, thou shalt discriminate against the majority population of the country. Right, if we're just talking statistics, where in Title VII, as far as pertains to corporate America and private business, does it say you are safe in discriminating against a population that is in the majority? I would love for our diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant to major companies to tell us of the legal cover all companies have in discriminating against people on the basis of their race so long as they fall within a larger demographic than someone else. Tell me where it says you're safe to do that. Tell me where the zero risk occurs. Okay, and also there's no such thing as reverse discrimination. There's just discrimination. And you're not somehow holy and saintly if you say, well, I can discriminate against that person because they're white. Oh, okay then.
So I really think even if you're just taking a risk mitigation perspective, companies are being very short-sighted right now. And the other thing I'll just say is...
The other thing you'll say is as they cut their DEI budgets and try to move away from DEI initiatives, your client base shrinks, doesn't it? Let's not pretend that our speaker here doesn't have a vested interest in perpetuating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So of course she does not want companies to shy away from these things. She has a profit motive. Is anybody going to bring that up?
As organizations are thinking about the benefits and risks and weighing all of this, I think it's also important to pay attention to the evolving talent pool, right? Almost 60% or about 60% of the workforce now are millennials and younger. Mm-hmm. And we see, a recent poll from our company Paradigm in the Harris poll found that 72% of people say that they want their organization to invest in building an inclusive workplace.
Yeah, because if you've been brainwashed over the last decade growing up and out of the colleges these days, of course you've been told that there's value in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course you have been. Because they want you to believe that. They want you to join the philosophy. But here's the question that they still haven't arrived upon. Is this legal? How do you maintain these programs in spite of Title VII? And where can you show me that simply having a diversity, by your own definitions, workforce, leadership, and so on, inherently leads to business success? Draw me the line, the causal line between your workforce population based on racial and gender demographics and an obvious outcome of success just based on those things. And then tell me about how skin color or gender inherently imparts upon a person a better way of thinking.
Our research shows people are 250% more engaged at work when they believe their company is committed to diversity. Glassdoor did some research that found that 75% of job seekers actively look at an organization's workforce diversity when choosing their next role.
Wow, they believe, they look, and?
So even if all you care about is hiring the best people, keeping those people,
and why shouldn't you?
And not getting sued for discrimination, like, you should not be rolling back these programs.
I mean, if you care about not being sued for discrimination, you really shouldn't be rolling back these programs. As you just articulated, actively discriminate against employees on the basis of their race and or their gender. Provably so. Intentionally so.
But we see organizations making some very weird calculations right now that I don't think are in their best interest, short-term or long-term.
I would estimate that your advice to corporations is ill-advised, if that's how you see it.
One thing I've heard from all three of you, and thank you for that. I wish I had a handheld mic for you so you could have dropped it after your first comment.
Yeah, she was really impressive. Her first comment?
I've covered diversity and inclusion for a number of years now. And one thing I've noticed across industries is that while companies aren't necessarily pulling back from corporate diversity efforts, they've gone mum. I saw a report out this morning which found that the mention of DEI has dropped precipitously in earnings calls in the last quarter. And this is the first earnings season since the Supreme Court's decision. So
can we, for a moment, imagine why that might be? Let's just all play devil's advocate for a minute and see what the perhaps legitimate concerns are and name them. You guys keep alluding to companies being concerned. You mentioned the Republican Attorney's General letter. You've talked about companies being sued. Are you going to talk about the causes, the whys, and the wherefores, and at least mention what the argument from the other side is?
How can and should corporations look to design and implement DEI initiatives if they are looking to minimize backlash? I don't know that that should be their core focus, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah,
Good. All right. Well, that is a straightforward question. Yes. All right. How should DEI programs operate going forward if they want to try to avoid legal complications?
I want to hear from both of my peers, and we all have different perspectives, I think slightly on this, but with kind of a shared set of values. So I'm very curious what we all have to say on this. But I think one thing we can do is maybe use this moment to reset how we've been communicating about DEI.
All right, yeah. It's the window dressing, it's the branding, it's the rhetoric. It's not the fundamental mechanisms behind it and the ultimate goals that whittle down to demographic quotas. No, it's just how we talk about it. Okay, well, all right, if that's your strategy, how would you change the words you use?
I think it's very concerning, almost as concerning as pulling back the efforts themselves to pull back talking about it, because it just shifts the expectation and sort of the default expectation of corporate America when we stop talking about this.
Okay, do you know why? Do you know why they've pulled back? What was the argument in defense of affirmative action that ultimately was found not to be sufficient to justify racial discrimination in college admissions. What was the basis of the argument in defense of affirmative action? It was the diversity argument that race-based affirmative action in colleges, in admissions, led to a diverse campus, and thereafter that diversity led to beneficial outcomes. And yet, over the course of years of litigation leading up to the Supreme Court, and the lawyers for both Harvard and UNC, they could not articulate to the justices any hard numbers or measurements of that outcome. They could give the judges nothing on which to base the argument for diversity. It was just diversity good. That was basically it. Diversity leads to innovation. How do you measure that? I don't know. Diversity leads to better outcomes. How do you measure that? I don't know. So if diversity no longer justifies discrimination and is no longer an out for the restrictions of Title VI, diversity can't be an argument for an out on Title VII. That's why they've started to pull back the rhetoric, because they're just asking for problems. I guess the question is, if our speakers are aware of that aspect to it, and if they are, why aren't they talking about it? And if they're not, should they be, in this position in the first place?
But I do think that over the past few years, some of the communications around DEI haven't told the story very effectively. Okay. They haven't focused on how what we're actually trying to do is close gaps.
And how do you close the gap? Quotas. When your gaps are only based on demographics, how do you close them? By filling those demographics, by balancing those demographics out. Because you're not talking about talent, you're not talking about individuals, you're talking about aesthetics.
Create fairness, create access. So for example, a lot of the work that we do at Paradigm is we go into organizations and we look at where disparities exist.
Oh, disparities. Okay, disparities. You look at where disparities exist.
In hiring funnels, in promotion rates, in sentiment, who says they feel engaged and who doesn't. And what we typically see is that the very groups you would imagine.
The very groups I would imagine? You mean demographics? Oh, the demographics I would assume based on what? Stereotype?
People from underrepresented and marginalized groups are faring worse. They're not.
Because of disparity. Okay, so demographics that in the overall population make up a smaller percentage of the people around us are in the lower end of the disparities you found. Oh my gosh. Do you mean to tell me that simply on statistical averages, based on overall population demographics, there are more of some kinds of people than there are others? All right. You know what? I believe you. I believe that these disparities exist. Okay. So by what mechanism do you aim to fix this problem? And then tell me how you are not using a quota system.
They're not moving through the hiring funnel at the same rate. They're not being promoted at the same rate. They're not being compensated fairly. And so we're trying to address those gaps to create fair outcomes. If in some hypothetical world we went into companies and we saw white men were being underpaid consistently and not promoted and not getting hired, that might also be a concern. That's just not what's happening.
And if you arranged for things to change that situation in order to elevate white men into better positions with better statistical outcomes, you would be just as wrong, both morally and potentially legally in doing so, because the law does not say thou shalt only help people who are in the minority demographics. It says you are not allowed to discriminate in employment on the basis of race or gender or religion or ethnicity or country of origin. It doesn't play favorites. and it's not based on demographic split.
And so this isn't about giving an unfair advantage or unfair access to particular groups.
Yes, it is. You just said you hadn't determined there was actually any racism, sexism, or whatever in these places. You just said disparity. You earlier said inequity, as though you'd reached some kind of conclusion about the cause. But here you said disparity, simply a difference in numbers. So you are going to artificially raise up people on the basis of the demographic they fall in to balance the scales, whether they've earned it or not. Otherwise, what are you saying you're doing again?
Even with all of the best efforts, we're still not even close to closing the gap for underrepresented and marginalized groups. So I think it's important to, if we're going to be thinking about our comms and our narrative, maybe use this moment to reset and make sure we're telling a good and clear story.
I don't want to hear the story. I want to hear what you are doing to solve this quote unquote problem specifically. How are you addressing these disparities? What are you doing? How are you evaluating people in promotions, in hiring, in opportunities, if not on the basis of demographics, which are illegal upon which to judge someone for employment?
About what it is that DEI efforts are all about. I saw a tweet recently. What are DEI teams doing all day? I was like, what aren't DEI teams doing? Making sure
I don't know. What are they? What aren't they?
people are paid fairly.
Making sure people are paid fairly. Okay, well, we have several laws on the books about pay equity and equal pay and minimum wage and so on and so forth. Okay, so you're saying DEI is about pay equity? That's the first thing you come to? Really? Huh. Okay, how are you ensuring that? How are you measuring that?
Making sure that people, when they return from parental leave, still have access to high visibility opportunities.
You're not going to mention anything about race. You're not going to mention anything about gender. So pay equity and parental leave. Really? Those are the first two that you want to shout out there. Interesting.
This is all about creating workplaces that work for everyone.
Really? Really? Because here's the thing. Pay equity and parental leave, it kind of applies to everybody. Huh. It's interesting that the first two that you do your mic drop on at the end of your little speech here apply to everyone regardless of their demographic. Huh. Interesting. All right. Keldrig, thank you so much. Quote, what aren't DEI programs doing? Unquote. Helping. They aren't helping. That is true. That is true. Thank you, Keldrig. All right. Well, we've had our consultant. Let's go back to our other speakers, I assume.
Absolutely. Alfonso, I want to turn to you. As the head of the Black Economic Forum, you've been coordinating a response to the legal challenge from Edward Bloom, who, as many of you know, is the protagonist or antagonist who brought the...
Oh, he's the antagonist. Okay.
Affirmative action case to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
What's the latest there?
So, as you know, I'm one of the lawyers representing the Fearless Fund, which is a venture capital firm that was sued for ostensibly providing grants to women of color.
Yes, you're providing financial opportunities to people on the basis of their race and gender. Yes.
Now, to put this in context, we have $288 billion that is distributed each year through the venture capital construct. Out of that, only 0.0036% goes to Black women.
Okay, so you're only being racist and sexist 0.0036% of the time. All right. So is that like being a little pregnant?
Sit with that for a minute.
I'll sit with that for a minute. Sure. How much racism and sexism is tolerable for you in financial opportunities in this country? I mean, seriously, how much racial and or sexual discrimination is tolerable for you in this country when it comes to financial opportunities. If a business that wasn't you was being affirmingly only 0.0036% of the time racist in favor of white men, is that tolerable? A principle in this country isn't a principle just some of the time. That is not a defense. Is that what you're going to go to court with? Your Honor, I swear we're only racist and sexist some of the time. Just
Yeah.
So these two Black women created a venture capital firm to try to address the disparity.
Okay, so they created a venture capital firm, a business operating in the United States, therefore falling under Title VII, Title VI. Well, if they accept any federal funding, at least some venture capital funds do, and on and on and on. Plus all the other financial laws dealing with financial opportunities in this country. And
now they're being sued,
yes,
arguing that by providing grants to Black women, to women of color generally, it violates federal law.
Well, does it? Okay, so now this is the part at which you'd say it doesn't violate federal law. And you can give, as a lawyer defending this venture capital firm, you can give the specific defense, the affirmative defense, for why they're not violating the law.
We're defending them vigorously in court.
Under what theory? What law are they purportedly violating, according to Edward Bloom? Was it Edward Bloom? I think. And what do you say to that charge?
We have oral arguments scheduled for the 26th of October or of September in a few.
26th of September. Oh boy, I wonder if I can get a transcript of those.
Weeks here in Atlanta,
okay.
Federal District Court. And, there are many arguments that we've advanced. I would suggest that people take a look at the papers, but
I kind of want to now.
Effectively, they don't have standing.
Why?
You need to have standing to challenge someone in court.
Okay. I mean, maybe they don't. I don't know.
They don't have that. And also, this is a foundation that's providing grants, which is entitled as a charitable organization to First Amendment protections.
Oh, so providing money in a discriminatory fashion is a First Amendment issue. Okay. As a predicate here, I am not a lawyer. I know just enough about legal stuff to be dangerous. So I don't know if our speaker is being accurate or not. He might be 100%. I mean, if you don't have any standing in a case, if you can't show damage or cause or anything else, you might not have a case at its foundation. Right. That doesn't necessarily make what this venture capital company is doing correct or right in a principled or moral way, but in a legal way, I can't say. I just have a whole lot of questions about it. But okay, so it's a charity organization venture capital fund. A charitable venture capital fund. See, I thought the whole point about venture capital was to, attain a profit in your investments. But I don't know. I'm not a financial wizard either. But okay, lack of standing, and as a charitable organization, it's protected under the First Amendment to distribute grants to whomever it wants based on whatever criteria. I mean, maybe that's so. And I'm not being facetious here when I say this. I don't know. Maybe that's so.
There are many other arguments that we have, but those are the two. And I would say that as we think about this in terms of the coordinated attacks that we're seeing, this is not just one lawsuit. There are many lawsuits that have been filed.
Yes.
Which is why the Global Black Economic Forum is announcing today, and we'll do it here, at the Fortune Impact Initiative, that we are and have convened a council for economic opportunity and social justice.
Oh, goody. An economic council for opportunity and social justice. Again, I'd be curious to know, even if you are technically in legal safe territory, if our speaker came across a charitable venture capitalist fund that was setting aside some millions of dollars specifically for grants geared only towards white men, no other qualifications, just white men, would he or would he not have a problem with that? Would that or would that not offend his senses? And if so, why? And if not, why not? But okay, a Council for Economic Opportunity and Social Justice.
That includes 13 of the most significant civil rights, social justice organizations in this country.
Oh, good.
And our goal is to make sure that we are responsive to the coordinated, precision-focused attacks against equity, inclusion, equality, and diversity.
Oh, okay. Well, it's going to be an interesting couple of years, I'll tell you that.
We care about.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the NAACP, the Urban League, Sister Song, Vote.org, the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, and many, many other organizations that are going to work together collaboratively so that we're responding to economic opportunity. We're focusing on civil rights.
You're focusing on civil rights. You're focusing on civil rights. Okay. Well, please take a look at Title VII and Title VI. Please take a hard look at Title VII and Title VI.
Focusing on human rights. We're focusing on civic engagement because we cannot sit back while we see a rollback of our rights and our protections.
It's not a roll. It is a defense of the rights in the Civil Rights Act. It is not a rollback of your rights. You do not have a right to discriminate against someone on the basis of their race in employment. You do not have a right to discriminate against someone on the basis of their gender in financial opportunities. You do not have a right to do that as a private company, as a college now. You do not have a right. It's so backwards. It's so topsy-turvy through the looking glass listening to this.
And so the Council for Economic Opportunity is being announced today.
Deserving of applause. I didn't want to interrupt you, please.
No, I think to Marion's earlier point, and Jarrell has said this so eloquently, we have to be prepared.
Okay, I've got a leaf blower or something going on outside. Hopefully you guys don't hear it. If you do, I apologize. I can't do anything about it. He's probably going to come up to my window here pretty soon, so oh well. To respond to coordinated attacks. This is not one isolated incident. And the goal is to pretend that our history, which we're still living through, we have vestiges of slavery that we're still trying to unshackle ourselves from. We can't pretend those don't exist. That's got nothing to do with this. This has got to do with the law as written and has been since 1964. Talk about quotas. Talk about what was actually said in the responsive letter from the Democratic Attorneys General. Talk about the one key point, the one key area that they zoned in on to try to give assurance to corporate America. The difference between an aspirational diversity goal and a quota. Talk about that. That's where the rubber meets the road on this.
Companies can't pretend that those don't exist.
Oh, geez.
We have to work collaboratively to actually address systemic forms of discrimination.
Wait, you want to address systemic forms of discrimination, and you're working in defense of a venture capital fund that sets money aside specifically for people on the basis of their race and gender. Not by happenstance, not by dumb luck, but by explicit stated goal. And DEI programs that do exactly the same thing. You're opposing systemic racism, but you're for DEI. Okay, all right.
And to your point, look, the decision from the Supreme Court was just made in June. It's only September. There's a lot more to go. We're still in the most nascent stages.
You are absolutely correct. This is just the beginning. The precedent set by the Supreme Court in doing away with the diversity argument for discrimination is only beginning. It's going to have ripple effects for years to come, and we've only just started seeing it. I did a video, I did a stream. Let me find it here real quick, just to toot my own horn, if only slightly. 1 second here, because I didn't have this prepared because I'm doing this on the fly. It was a law firm. Let's see, where is it now? Oh, wow, it was a while back, more so than I thought. Where did it go? Did I just... Oh, wait, no, I did it as a video. That's right, Morrison Foerster. Morrison Foerster. That's right. Let me copy the link over and put it into the chat. Yeah, so there was a law firm that had basically a grant educational opportunity set aside specifically for people on the basis of their race. And then this same concern under Edward Bloom, it's Edward Bloom, right? I keep thinking, wasn't that the character from Big Fish? The movie Big Fish, the Tim Burton movie. Anyway, they got ready to sue Morrison Foerster for discrimination. And then Morrison Foerster all of a sudden changed the language of their grant opportunity to everybody can have access to it. Yeah, because they saw the danger. They were suddenly brought to be aware of the legal danger they had put themselves in for years with that opportunity. But yes, the ramifications of the Supreme Court's decision are only just beginning. And everybody on this stage, whether they want to admit it or not, are running scared.
So I did want to just touch on the DEI component of the question, and building on what Joel was saying, is that we have to control the narrative of what DEI is. It's
okay, what is DEI?
Not just race. And I think that
DEI is not just race. No, you're right. It's not just race. It's also gender and orientation, primarily. Yes.
Control the narrative of what DEI is. It's not just race. And I think that's what's happening right now.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem that you're in. You know what? You're right. It's not just race, but race, gender, orientation, country of origin, religion, they all sit on equal footing under the law. In Title VII, race is in the same sentence as all those other elements. So on a legal basis, yeah, you're right. DEI isn't just about race, but every other element you guys focus on is just as much a legal landmine for anybody employing these practices. That's the fun part. That's the fun part the law operates under, is that any discrimination you do is wrong.
But everything is going under race. We are looking at holistically. How do we create a society and organizations where everyone has an opportunity to learn, grow, and lead?
As long as they fall within the approved demographics. You just heard her say they're looking for disparities and then playing favorites on the basis of statistical difference. Assuming an inequity simply where there is a disparity.
And that's women, that's people of color.
Yeah, okay, not a basis on which you can discriminate. Also not a basis on which you can discriminate under the law.
That's LGBTQI
Another element you cannot discriminate on the basis of.
Community, that's people with disabilities.
Well, you can't discriminate there either.
That's military.
I was wondering, when are we going to get to the veterans? Of course, it's always last on the list. It's always the most insulative element to a defense of this stuff. You always come back down at the very end of veterans. The one category under which that actually speaks to someone's merit, that actually speaks to someone's lived experience, and you just use it as it's always the punctuation of the sentence, isn't it? That's all that veterans are good for in DEI, is a last-minute mention and insulative material to all of the other legal and moral questions of the elements that precede it. In ERGs and in here, it's, oh man.
So this is holistic. This is an attack on holistic DEI, not just one component. But if we start to separate the different components, it's easier to attack. But when we come as a collective and we think about DEI and how all of us fit into DEI,
they're all on the same level legally. You can, if I pick apart all of the elements you talked about, each one of those things is listed in the same sentence under the law. If I put them all together, they're all listed in the same sentence under the law. There is no escape. There is no escape. The question mark over the legality of what you are promoting has always been there. It's only now that the powers that be are asking the question.
That's where the power lies.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue into my final question here, and I'd love to hear from all of you. Please kick it off. There are those who believe that a focus on race in college admissions was a missed opportunity from the start, that perhaps socioeconomic diversity should have been the focus, and I suppose a corporate equivalent to that would be a skills-focused approach to hiring, for instance. But
can you imagine a skills-focused approach to hiring? Wait, did you just hear that? Like it was some weird novel, it's kind of a hypothetical, a skills-focused approach to hiring. I suppose the equivalent to a socioeconomic assessment of someone for college opportunities and admissions, I suppose the corporate equivalent would be, I don't know, a skills-focused assessment for hiring. Wow. Let's hear that again. I really like that. I really like that. Let's go for that one more time.
Please kick it off. There are those who believe that a focus on race in college admissions was a missed opportunity from the start, that perhaps socioeconomic diversity should have been the focus. And I suppose a corporate equivalent to that would be a skills-focused approach to hiring, for instance, but regardless, not using race-based diversity measures.
Yes. Merit, not demographic.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you see an opportunity to expand how we prioritize diversity efforts moving forward?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we're doing at Novartis that helps to lead the way is our Beacon of Hope initiative.
Your Beacon of Hope initiative. Oh, okay. So if your Beacon of Hope initiative is not focusing on, say, race, then what other elements besides, or, aside from, is it?
And it's a partnership with 26 historically Black colleges.
Not looking good.
And the 4 medical schools. And it's a 10-year, $50 million commitment, not a pledge. It's a commitment where we are providing scholarships, mentorship, research grants for the professors, as well as internship opportunities for those students to enable the next generation of leaders.
Based on what elements of their makeup? How does that in any way, shape, or form answer her question? I believe her question was the first time she even voiced any kind of alternative theory or dissent or opposing opinion to the way that affirmative action operated in colleges, right? She was saying that some argue that affirmative action was going the wrong way from the beginning in focusing on race and should have instead focused on socioeconomic status. All right. So if you had to find a fault with DEI and how it could be improved using something less, let's say, controversial legally or otherwise, but he goes straight into an initiative that's based entirely around race. Okay.
When you look at where society is going, it's going to be more diverse.
And the Civil Rights Act will still be right there. If every demographic in this country suddenly flipped tomorrow, it would still be wrong to discriminate in employment on the basis of race. That's the beauty of the law. It doesn't say, oh, well, the statistical proportion of the population that's largest is okay to discriminate against. No, because race says nothing about someone's character or ability. But okay, you keep going.
We're going to need doctors. We're going to need lawyers. We're going to need business people.
And that will be true forever, regardless of the racial demographics. What are you talking about?
From all demographics
Yeah, and that's going to be true regardless. What are you talking about?
for us to be successful. Because if you want to tap into a community and their power, they need to see people like them when you come to the table.
Oh, okay. All right. So you'd be fine with someone walking into a doctor's office and saying, I want a fill in the blank with the race of the patient as their doctor. Like shall only be treated by like. I can't imagine a future for myself if I don't see someone of my same type in that position, because I'm so racist, I have to dismiss anything where I don't see someone who looks like me, or I don't have the imagination or the ambition to even think about it. That's the philosophy you want to promote? Okay.
And so we're helping to ensure that that's a part of the future of DEI as well as the future of this nation.
Okay, so DEI is a moral imperative based on making sure that people see themselves in their leaders, that people cannot imagine themselves advancing or succeeding if they can't see someone who aesthetically resembles them. Okay.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Joelle.
So the decision has been made, right?
Right.
I would have made it differently. I actually think that focusing on the discrete needs of particular groups is really important. I think that affirmative action based on race made a whole lot more sense than affirmative action based on socioeconomic status. Because
You thought affirmative action based on race made more sense than a socioeconomic status. So simply on aesthetic rather than life circumstances that are measurable. Okay, well, I cut her off, so let's keep going.
important. I think that affirmative action based on race made a whole lot more sense than affirmative action based on socioeconomic status, because a wealthy Black person can walk into a store and be followed around just as much as someone from a lower socioeconomic background, and more than a white person from a lower socioeconomic background.
What does that have to do with opportunities in education? The fact that racism exists does not mean then that you are justified in applying racism to opportunities in education. What are you talking about? What? Okay, and our speaker consults on this subject to major corporations. Okay.
A Black person is more likely to be pulled over driving down the street than a white person.
So that makes racism okay in college admissions for education opportunities. Not assessing somebody's needs versus their merit, but race. Okay.
Regardless of socioeconomic background. So I actually think focusing on the discrete structural racism that exists in our society is very, very important.
You want to focus on structural racism by defending race-based admission initiatives. Okay, this is the second time now we've had somebody just...
And if we can't do that through affirmative action, I actually think we need to find different ways to do that. Now, it doesn't...
Like what? You're the DEI consultant. What other ways do you suggest in your expertise? I want to hear what these other strategies are. What are they? We're not going to hear them. There's only a minute left, but geez Louise.
Can't do that through affirmative action. I actually think we need to find different ways to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't focus DEI efforts, corporate DEI efforts broadly on every underrepresented group.
Oh, every underrepresented group. So again, we're going back to statistical disparities rather than actual injustice or something. Okay.
But I think we need to be specific about what structural racism is, and that it is very different than many of the hurdles faced by other groups.
Yeah, tell me define structural racism for me. Take those two words, do a whole spelling bee deconstruction for me. Okay, what do those two words mean? And then describe for me affirmative action in colleges as it operated up until June of this year.
Right. We have to wrap things up, but it's quite obvious that the legal floodgates to corporate diversity initiatives within the business landscape have been opened.
Yes, thankfully so. And you guys didn't even go into what the arguments are on either side of the equation, but okay.
And companies will have to draw a line in the sand in very short order. Marianne, Alfonso, Joelle, thank you so much for your time.
Well, there you go. That is the end of the Impact Initiative 2023, discussing affirmative action and the corporate landscape, and really telling us nothing except that everybody on the stage wanted to avoid at least the pragmatic questions. The leaf blower guy's like right up to my window now. I assume you guys can hear that. It's going to be very difficult for me to continue now. So, is he quieting down for a minute? Is he walking away? Maybe. Okay, well, I think I might have to wrap up here before I get drowned out again. Yeah, so there you go, everyone. I think the time is, an hour and 15 minutes. Okay, really? That's all I've been on for? Oh, I guess it is. Huh. All right, well, time, it seemed like longer. It seemed like I trudged through a lot more stuff there. You can't hear the leaf blower at all. Okay, well, if you can't hear it, then I'm fine. All right, so with all that being said, I'll take a minute or three here for you guys if you have any comments you'd like to have added to the conversation. But while you formulate those or repaste them into the chat if I missed them previously, a couple of programming notes. First and foremost, you can find me here tomorrow, Wednesday, at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, for my second hosting duty of the AAA meeting, the ammunition and alcohol meeting, or the alcohol and ammunition meeting, whichever. Also featuring Sinatra Says and Drunken Uncle, where we will talk about various news items I have yet to collect because news happens every day. And so you can find a link to that show on my main page. I don't have it handy right this second. I'm sure somebody in the chat will helpfully provide it momentarily, and to set your notifications for that. And then Thursday, I got a busy week this week. Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, you'll also find me here for TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk. I haven't chosen mine for this week yet. I still have some options open, and there's still at least a day left for TEDx to drop some more presentations for me to choose from. So looking forward to that. Let's see. Somnambulation. All furniture should be 1 foot high. At least. At minimum, I suppose. Unless your furniture is like a beanbag or a pillow or something. I mean, a pillow could be furniture as a seating arrangement or something. Caro Soldier. Great stream, Scribe. Love these extra streams along with AAA. Well, I appreciate that you appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's see. Roger Reynolds says, heard it for a second, then it was gone. Okay, yeah, it was pretty loud here. I guess the noise canceling on StreamYard is actually pretty good, thankfully. And Derek LaRue, thanks for the content, Scribelight. You're welcome, Derek, and thank you so much again for your donation. Appreciate it. I don't see any other comments here. All right, well, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here because I think my voice is about to give out anyway. If I've missed anything you wanted to say, please leave it below once the stream has posted officially. And also follow me on Twitter. X. Follow me on X at scribe_light. Beyond that, I think that's all. Oh, wait, there was the Discord server. If you didn't know, if you're new here from the AAA stream, I do have a Discord server, and occasionally I remember to plug it on my own channel. So let me put up a link to that right now. And to join the Discord server, there are a couple of rules. First and foremost, you have to click on the link, which will take you to the Say Hello landing channel. And in addition to saying hello, you have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me and my moderators you actually watched the stream, which is your key to becoming a member of the Discord server. And today's secret word is fortune. Yes, say hello and fortune, and you'll become a member of the Discord server. With that, everyone, thank you for joining me for this ambush stream of Impact Stream on Initiative Stream for a Tuesday. Hope you're all doing well. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the fundraisers posted at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Hope to see you guys tomorrow, Wednesday, for the AAA meeting, and then Thursday for the TEDx stream. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.